Hi, this is Gavin Haverstick with Haverstick Designs, and this is the Sound Project. All right, so I'm here today with Jeremy Mang from Recording Studio Loser.
How's it going?
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for joining us. And we're at Sweetwater's Gearfest 2023. And is this your first year coming to Gearfest?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's the experience been like so far?
Overwhelming.
Yeah. There's like so much stuff going on. It's
crazy. It's fun. There's a whole lot of people to meet. There's so much gear. It's dangerous, but fun.
Yeah. Every time I walk in this place, I'm just like, should I get something new or should I hold off? And normally I hold off. I've got pretty good self control on that front. But yeah,
Teach me.
Yeah. Have you been to Sweetwater before or?
It's been a very long time. For as close as I live, I'm about an hour and a half away. Mm-hmm. I have been here maybe 10 years ago.
Okay.
So I try not to come.
Yeah.
Not because I don't love it,
That's
just
some
because.
Restraint.
Yeah, I try not to spend the money here.
Good.
So.
Awesome. Well, I'm so glad that we were able to catch up. I stopped by your studio maybe 3 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah.
And first time that we, not the first time we'd met. We met briefly at NAMM this year as well. But tell me a little bit just about like your background and how you ended up in this industry. And it can go as long or as short as you want. So.
Okay, buckle up. Here we go. I started as a musician, as most of us do. I played guitar for a long time when I was a little kid. I played guitar for a very long time. I'm not nearly as good as I should be. And that was always a hobby, so playing in bands. I got to be on the road, which was really cool, which led me to a bunch of studios, which is a really cool experience. And then you get to a certain point and you start to get frustrated not seeing that like creative vision take hold the way you think it should, which is completely subjective.
Sure.
But go fast forward, went to college, went to grad school, did the whole thing. I was actually going for business. Had always worked around music, worked in audio. I sang opera. That's how I met my wife. And then out of that, trying to find a job was 2009. Couldn't find anything. So my background as a musician, I still had all this gear, and recording friends at the time was how I kept food on the table. And then one thing led to another, and now I have a commercial recording studio.
Yeah.
So just not finding a job and trying to keep food on the table.
Yeah. Well, you found a job.
Yeah.
It's just
it found me,
yeah.
I guess.
That's so cool. I heard a lot in there. Like one that you went to school for business, which I'm sure that helps out running a studio, being able to manage just the business side of things so that you can then focus on what you're doing for creatively. So has that helped you out on that front?
I think sometimes when I look back on it, I kind of think that maybe all that school was a bit wasted on me. But at the same time, the further I get down it, there's things that I really take from it that have been beneficial. Not that I use all of it all the time, and not that I think that that's a road everybody should go down, but it was one that worked out for me for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I heard in there is that you sang opera.
I did. Yeah.
So I almost went to school for musical theater. Like that was like one of the things I wanted to do. And then I went to New York my senior year of high school and did some workshops with actors. And everyone told me like, man, this is the best job in the world if you could find one. And it just scared me. I was like, I'd like something more stable than that. And so like for you, I could understand like if you graduated around 2009 as well, like it was already hard to find jobs in any industry. Yeah. So wow. So what got you into singing opera?
In high school, I was in band actually, and the way it worked out with sports, because I was also a football player and weightlifter at the time, and you couldn't do both of those things. I needed the extracurricular, so I went to choir. And then as I transitioned into college, I got into what they call the chorale at the school that I went to. And then one thing led to another. I ended up singing barbershop for a long time, competitively, if you want to get real nerdy with it.
Which I do. Yeah.
No, I love it. And then being like a vocal performance, getting a degree in that like led you to opera, and I got to do a lot of cool stuff. I got to sing with Ben Folds.
No way.
It's wild. I love that part of my life. I don't do it nearly as much anymore, but
sure.
Yeah.
Now, do you get asked, like, in the studio, do you ever sing on people's albums, background singing or anything like that?
I do a lot, and I think I try not to if people don't want me to, but it seems like a lot of singers in the custom client realm like know that they want background vocals, but they don't know exactly what they want. And I think the background of like arrangement and barbershop, I can come up with background vocals really, really fast.
Yeah.
And even if it's just going in and singing a part, to then feed it back through their ears so that they can re-sing it.
Right.
And it makes the process super fast.
That's cool. So tell me a little bit about your studio. I know that did it always start in the commercial facility that you had, or?
No. I had started in the basement of an apartment when I was trying to find other work. And then it was while I was there, I was actually making an income. And my wife now, who at the time was a girlfriend, she found a job in this one particular location. I found the building in that same particular location. So it was kind of like, I guess we're meant to be here. Yeah. And it was just one thing led to another. Started out as a lease, which eventually turned into a purchase. And then that's kind of where I've settled. So.
Yeah, it's such a cool space. Like when Ryan, who is normally sitting where you're sitting during our podcast, him and I, we visited the studio, and before it was a dentist's office or a doctor's office?
I think it was I want to say it was an eye doctor first, and then it was a pain care center right before I got it. So there were surgical rooms before I moved in. All those had to be knocked down. The lobby's the same, but that's about it.
Yeah. But it's such a cool space. You've got a nice sized live room in there. You've got your control room. We talked about potentially making some changes with one of the rooms, and maybe.
I'm super excited about it.
Yeah. Are you going to do it, you think?
I'm still on the fence.
Yeah. So. Yeah, the idea was to maybe take one of the is it kind of a lounge area and turn it into an atmos space, which would be pretty awesome, but an undertaking.
Yes, for sure, for sure.
Yeah, but and I loved your desk setup in the control room. Like it's like more of like a kind of standing desk, very minimal.
I think I took that straight from an Andrew Masters studio tour video where he did Mike Sibilia, I want to say. He had a desk just like that, and I kind of reverse engineered it from the video and then added a standing desk, and I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a good use of the space, and then you don't have that first reflection point off of a big console or some big desk surface. And so acoustically, you made the right choice as well.
Yeah, I didn't even know.
So how do you know Ryan again?
I think he messaged me at one point. Like we were kind of friends of friends, I believe.
Yeah.
And he worked here at Sweetwater. I had asked a question about getting a guitar plucked, and he's like, "Oh, hey, yeah, I live close. I can take it for you." And then we just kind of started chatting from there. So.
Okay, yeah. So Ryan's from Kokomo, and that's where you're at.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. With the studio, do you are you mostly recording full bands, or is it?
It's a wide gamut of stuff. I think my bread and butter is like larger sessions where there's multiple players at the same time. There's 101 different ways to record any number of things, but I like the type of stuff where I can get a bunch of people in the room, and do it all at once. Like there's a magic to that. Then like the actual room becomes a part of the band, if that makes sense.
For sure.
That's kind of like hippy dippy, but
no, I agree with that. And then there's also things like that where little magic moments happen that if you multi-tracked it, you wouldn't pick those up. Like it could be even just someone dropping a drumstick or something like that at the end of a track, or like little things that I like it when it's left in because it feels real.
For sure. Or so many things like getting a bunch of people in the same room. You can have somebody stab on like beat 3. And what would be taken out in a multi-track situation, you're like, no, that's really vibey. Let's keep that. Lean into those mistakes, and you find the song becomes its own thing.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. So I want to talk too about your channel, Recording Studio Loser. One, I want to know like how the name came about.
There was a podcast that I was really into, and this started as a podcast actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Nobody knows where it is. I don't even know anymore. But there was a podcast that I was really into, Recording Studio Rockstars. And I was like, I'm never going to be as good as these guys. Like, what's the opposite? And I wasn't trying to throw any shade. I was just like, I know my place. I'm a Recording Studio Loser. And it comes from a place of, I guess, you're always learning something. I know the name is a turnoff for a lot of people, but I guess if you own that and you always go with it, the approach of like trying to be as humble as possible, knowing you don't know everything and knowing that that's okay.
Yeah. I do that myself. Like there's a lot of people that will look at Haversack Designs as kind of a thought leader in this industry and all of that, but I'm not anywhere close to learning all the things I need to learn, and so it's something where I think the moment that you're too comfortable in what you know, then that's the downfall. So that's cool. I didn't know that was the thing. But so you started as a podcast, and then what's it evolved into? Like, what are you doing mostly?
It's kind of like a diary for what happens around the studio. Like I'm definitely a studio engineer first and foremost. And YouTube was a hobby I picked up, and I absolutely love it. I've become addicted to it, but I feel like I would not have anything to talk about if there was no studio.
Sure.
So it's what happens in that space, the thought processes behind it, kind of the business stuff that happens. Not that I'm a business expert, but like there's not a whole lot of stuff out there like that, I guess.
Yeah.
And the few times I have talked about it, it seems like there's people who want to hear that side of it. So,
do you have a sense of the majority of your followers? Like, what do they do?
It seems like people who are either running studios, want to run a studio, kind of that approach. There's also people who have nothing to do with music. Like, so it's a wide mix of people who reach out and talk, and it's really cool. I don't know.
It's like it's neat to see all these pockets, especially here at Gearfest. There's so many content creators, and they all have these little pockets. And I'm sure there's overlap and gray areas where people follow both. But a lot of times it ends up being this little community that people will talk together, and they'll the more and more they follow you, they have kind of a relationship with you over time, like asking questions, and I just think it's awesome. Like we're in the early stages of our YouTube channel, like we just started last year, but it's just so cool to see what people are getting out of it and what they're interested in, and just the fact that anyone would want to listen to me talk about acoustics and studio design every Monday at noon. It's kind of crazy. So, but it's fun. It's a cool way to reach out to people. We actually get a lot of just referrals from people found us on YouTube, which is wild to me.
And I think that's a part of even why I started. It was kind of that first initial handshake to make the studio make sense. As I was putting out videos that were like, hey, prepare this before you go to your session. So then I could turn around and give that to clients who wanted to come to the studio. Yeah. So that was kind of the thought process in the beginning, I guess, now that I think about it. And yeah, it's interesting to look back on it like that. Yeah,
that's awesome. I mean, and we've found from different people, even some of the sales engineers here at Sweetwater, there's like, man, the podcast is so cool because I can send an episode to a customer and not have to explain how HVAC can ruin your isolation or whatever. It's like little things and nuggets that we can put out there for people to take with them. So it's really fun. And I know sometimes you guys you do some like gear reviews and things like that on your channel. So,
a little bit. Yeah. I mean, I love gear, but at the same time, there's kind of a relationship there where you don't want to lean too heavily on gear because I'm very much. You're going to get way more difference if you move a mic an inch, or if you take 10 more minutes and tune that drum a little better, or if that guitar's tuning stability is better. Everything else is a cherry on top. Yeah. So it is a weird line to ride when you start doing gear reviews, because I'm also not really into like specs very much. I'm not going to be the guy that talks about that. It's how is it working in a real life context, in a functioning studio? Does this speed up my workflow? Does this help me in some way?
Yeah.
And all that is surrounded by, all these other things have to work. The songs have to be good. The musicians have to have the vibe. Like, you have to know what you want out of this. And then the gear is the finishing touch.
Yeah, I tell people this all the time, but everyone always thinks that since I do what I do, it's all about pristine audio, and that's all I care about. And for me, I'd rather listen to an amazing song on a horrible sound system than a horrible song on an amazing sound system. Like that's still my thing. It's like it's still about the song, and because for me, it's the creativity and like the thought that goes behind the lyrics and the musicianship, all that's important, and it's good to get a good recording, but the feeling's got to be right, or else it just doesn't work for me, you know.
Absolutely.
So, with your studio, when you got that space, what kind of acoustical challenges did you come across while you were building it?
I had no idea what I was doing. Okay, so I went to Lowe's and I bought a ton of Ruxel Safe and Sound because that's what I could get.
Yeah.
And I killed everything. And I may have gone overboard in certain places. And I mean, the space has adapted and changed, and we had water damage, which led to like knocking down a wall and expanding the live room into what it is now, which is what you've seen. And so it's kind of changed and evolved. And along the way, I have no idea if what I'm doing is correct, but it's kind of become like get to know the quirks of the room. Like even my drum space, I know like if I stand in this one space, I have this weird flutter that happens. And if I put a mic there and I smash it, I love it.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't, it's been a very DIY process. And I was super nervous when you were coming by the way. I had no idea what to expect with that.
Yeah.
But you were super gracious with that whole thing.
I mean, for me, I love a vibe in a studio, and yours has it. You know, I think you feel real comfortable in there, and a lot of the things you did, I think acoustically are working out well, and obviously you put out you put out good work. So it's that's the end of the day. It's like there's so often times where people will reach out to me, and I've had some clients or potential clients say like, man, I downloaded this free software. I swept my room, and then here's the frequency response. Look at these dips and peaks. Like, I need to fix that. And one of my first questions is like, well, how are your mixes translating? And they'll say, well, pretty good. Like, I never get any complaints. And then I'm like, well, we're done here. You know, like we don't, if you fixate too much, I mean, obviously I'm an engineer by degree, and I love testing data, and I love to really dig into that sort of thing. And I want to get the flattest frequency response that we can in these mix rooms. But at the end of the day, it all matters in how it's translating. And so if you've learned the room, and if you've done things well and it's translating, then if it's not broke, don't fix it, that type of thing. So
here's a question for you then.
Okay.
I guess if you're, with my little knowledge of all of this, if you're building like a space from scratch for somebody, like if I was coming to you, like I don't have a studio.
Yeah.
Would the approach then be, I imagine the approach would be you want as flat of a room as possible because that person has never sat in that room before. But is it a different approach? Like if you come to somebody like me who's sat in a room for 11 years,
sure, and
clearly my room is not perfect.
Yeah. I think that the flatter the frequency response, the better things are going to be, because what and we haven't measured your room or anything, but if there are inconsistencies and peaks and dips in the frequency response, and you've been in there for a long time, sometimes you can just account for that because you've learned the room, you know, and now if you were to then go into a room that's more flat, you might have a little bit of the same learning curve to like, oh, wow, in the past, like let's say you had a 6 or 7 dB dip at 60 hertz in your current space. I'm making this up, but and you're constantly at first you'd probably have constantly boost the kick drum a little bit more than you needed to, and then you realized, wow, all my mixes are really kick drum heavy when I take them out of here. I need to dial that back a little bit, but you've learned that over time. And so if you moved into a new space that was super flat, you might dial back on the kick drum because that's what you're used to doing, but that's not what that room exhibits.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's always easier when you have a flatter response because there's less things to learn. Because sometimes we do a test of a room and there's 7 or 8 really major problems with it, and having to learn each one of them, like you're just doing like audio gymnastics in that room, and you're just like constantly trying to fix things. Whereas if you start off with a flatter response and you're just you know everything you're going to do, you can trust it and that it's going to translate.
That makes a whole lot of sense.
Yeah. I sometimes make some sense.
That's also frightening if I were to ever go to another room.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you kind of have to rethink things. And I mean, I've seen some commercial studios that I mean, just some amazing work comes out of there, but it's because those engineers have learned that room, because acoustically they probably aren't that great, you know. But if you're good and I think it's talent and time. You know, like if you have talent, you have good ears, and you make good decisions, and you have enough time in the room to be able to learn them, then sometimes you can get around them. Sometimes people, you know, they don't have that type of talent, and they don't have that type of time, and they need some help on that front. And that's where treating a room and getting it flat can be really nice.
It'd be interesting to see what a measurement of my room is, so that if I ever went to another space, I would know how to account for it.
We can do that easily, actually. Like, we could do a remote test, or I can come up. I mean,
I love it.
Yeah, the nice thing is that Kokomo's not far from us, and so we could come up, and that'd be a fun thing just to film and kind of see what's going on. I know you had mentioned, like, hey, we should do like a segment of like you just ripping apart my studio, which I would never do, because that's not how I operate.
Well, you're such a nice guy. I think it would just be really funny if you were just like a total jerk to me the whole time.
I could maybe do that, you know, channel my old acting career and do that, and so just be a complete opposite of the way I normally am. There you go. Okay, I'll try it.
Just to me, though.
I'll try it. It'll be like, I'll just say like, man, this room is not ideal. Does that
No,
convincing?
Go further.
Oh, okay.
You gotta go hard.
No, I'll practice before we get there. So, but yeah, we should definitely do that. And as far as like, I'm curious, like, how much of your recording studio business is just local people around Kokomo, or do people come in, fly in to do things?
I have more and more people coming in from pretty far away. I had bands fly in, which is flattering, and it seems crazy to even say that. Not a whole lot of my stuff is local. I do local bands, but I mean, that's not the lion's share of what I do by any means. And I'm kind of priced out of it. Yeah. Which any chance I get, I love to support my local scene, because I think that's really, really important. But that's not what sustains that business for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then, do you get very many people that want to come record with you because of the YouTube channel?
It's as of recently, yeah. I mean, I've gotten a lot of gigs, just like especially mixing and mastering stuff from all over the world, which is awesome. Like getting to interact with people with different musical tastes of different like cultures is really interesting. Yeah. And a whole lot of fun. Just seeing how different people approach things, like what those different like cultural tendencies will come forward, and the emotions that you're trying to convey or lean into is a whole lot of fun.
Yeah. We just recently I was telling Luke from More Than Media, who does our videos here, that he did a great job lighting our maps in our normal setup in our office, because I had a consultant from Johannesburg in South Africa. He's been watching our podcast, and he's like, I could tell there's a pin in your map in Johannesburg. What have you done here? And like, can we collaborate on some stuff? And it's just like, it's wild what that YouTube presence can even open up. Like we had someone reached out, they're watching in the Philippines, and they have a project. That's and so just cool. Yeah, it's just awesome. It's neat, like the reach that you can have, and honestly, like you know, like you said, every culture and every country that we work in, like there's other things that we have to learn, because sometimes the building materials isn't the same that we typically use here in the U.S. And so we have to research the sound isolation qualities of what's readily available, and yeah, it's just a nice fun thing to do.
That's super cool. I bet that's fun for somebody who wants to naturally research things too.
Yeah, yeah, it's good for interns as well. Like hey, like do as much research as you can on this given material, and report back to us and how it compares to the stuff that we typically use. And yeah, it's fun. Well, that's awesome. What's anything on the horizon for you, like with your channel? Or is there any like different directions you're going with it, or is it? I love the fact that it's like a diary of the studio, because I think the nice thing about that is that you never run out of content. Like you're just constantly documenting what you're doing.
As long as I still have a studio, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm kind of playing with two different things that I'm trying out. I have worship stream audio, which is kind of like the broadcast audio side of what I do. I mean, right now there's just like a template there and how I approach broadcast audio. There will be like templates for all different kinds of DAWs and stuff. Right now there's just Pro Tools, but as well as training and stuff that we're actively working on for like training volunteers in the church world, because it seems like there's some resources there, but like highly specific things. Like, what do you want your volunteer to know? What could make you a more effective leader if you had this base of knowledge that you could then pull from? Working on stuff like that. And then on more of the YouTube side, recordingstudioacademy.com, kind of that same thing, but more in the recording studio realm. And there's definitely some overlap, but those two things are fairly separate, I think.
That's really similar to kind of our business, is that 70% of what we do is recording studio designs, and but then there's a big portion, that 30% is churches, performance halls, like larger spaces. And I love being able to do a lot of different things, because then it's not you're not burned out just doing the same thing over and over again. And so it's really nice to be able to help all sorts of markets, and what you're doing with the training in churches. I mean, I see that all the time. It's just like, it's wonderful that that churches have these volunteers, but they need support. They need some extra help, because they may not be naturally gifted at doing certain things. And sometimes people just look at that as like, okay, well, they can't help on this. No, they can. They just need training, and they need some support.
And it's not that the leaders don't know how to train or that they can't train. It's a lot of times those people are stretched so thin. Like, there's some worship leaders that I've worked with are worked to the bone, that they just don't have time to put into their volunteers like I know that they want to. And so if there was that base knowledge, then you could pour into them in a more effective way with the time that you have.
I read something recently. I may have the number incorrect, but it's a very high number. It was something like 60% of worship leaders considered resigning, in the last year. And just because it is a stressful environment, and there's a lot of things going on. Like you said, they're just worked to the bone, because a lot of times they may be on staff, but they have volunteers, got to coordinate schedules and all those things. And so it's cool that anything that you can do to make that process easier might get people to stick through a little bit of the harder times and kind of make it to the other side of that.
That's the hope. We'll see.
That's very cool. Man, it's been so good catching up with you. I'm glad that we were able to connect, and let's do that. Video of us coming up and measuring the studio. That'd be super fun.
As long as you're a total jerk.
Okay, I will work on it. I might have to get in character in some way, and maybe some road rage on the way there. If you could plant some people to cut me off or something. But
I'm on it.
All right, that sounds good. So thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. So this has been another episode of The Sound Project. Thank you for being a part of it. If you have any ideas for other podcasts you'd like to have us record, feel free to email us at info@haversickdesigns.com or comment below, and we will see you next week. You won't see them next week.
I'll see them all.
See them all.